The strange metal gleamed under the harsh lights of the dig site. Dr. Lisa Watson carefully brushed away centuries of dust, her heart racing as more of the artifact revealed itself. This was no ordinary find. The metal shouldn't be here, not on this distant world, and certainly not buried beneath 50 meters of undisturbed soil. "John, come look at this," she called to her colleague. Captain John Miller crossed the excavation pit, his boots leaving clear imprints in the freshly exposed dirt. He crouched beside her, eyes widening as he examined the artifact. "Is that what I think it is?" he asked, voice hushed with awe. Lisa nodded. "It looks like part of a control panel. The metal composition is unlike anything in our database, but these markings—" She traced her finger above the surface, not quite touching the ancient symbols. "They resemble early human script, pre-galactic era." John's brow furrowed. "That's impossible. Humans didn't have interstellar capabilities until the Great Expansion, barely 2,000 years ago. The carbon dating doesn't lie." Lisa gestured to her datapad. "This is over 50,000 years old, minimum." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of 3 tall, blue-skinned figures at the edge of the dig site. The Xilorians' breathing apparatuses made soft hissing sounds as they surveyed the humans' work with obvious disdain. "Ambassador Zrel," Lisa acknowledged with a nod. "This is unexpected. The Galactic Council sent us to evaluate your discovery." The Xilorian's voice carried the distinctive musical lilt of his species, though his tone suggested he found the entire expedition beneath his dignity. "You claim to have found technology of significant age." Lisa stood, wiping dust from her knees. "We've uncovered artifacts that may rewrite our understanding of human history." Zrel stepped carefully into the pit, his 2 associates following close behind. He barely glanced at the metal panel before making the dismissive gesture. "Primitive technology. Nothing more than basic alloys and simple control mechanisms, hardly worth the Council's attention." John stiffened. "With respect, Ambassador, this technology is far older than human space travel should be. That makes it significant regardless of its apparent complexity." The Xilorian's skin rippled in what humans had learned was their equivalent of laughter. "Captain Miller, your species' eagerness to claim importance in galactic history is charming, if misguided. Many civilizations achieved spaceflight millennia before humans emerged from your little blue planet." Lisa ignored the condescension. She'd faced it throughout her career. The newest species in the Galactic Council was often treated as the least important. "These symbols match no known alien language," she insisted, "but they do share characteristics with ancient human writing systems." "Coincidence," Zrel said. "Or perhaps your ancestors observed visiting spacecraft and mimicked what they saw." As the Xilorians continued their inspection, clearly unimpressed, Lisa's datapad chimed. "New scan results." Her eyes widened as she read the findings. "John," she whispered, "the ground-penetrating radar just completed its sweep. This isn't just a panel. There's an entire structure down there. Something big." John glanced at the Xilorians, then back to Lisa. "How big?" "Ship-sized," she replied. "And the energy readings suggest some systems might still be operational." The dig site's communication system crackled to life. "Dr. Watson, we've found another artifact cluster 2 kilometers east. You'll want to see this immediately." Within hours, Lisa stood before a massive door embedded in the side of a mountain. The metal was the same unusual alloy, but these markings were clearer, more deliberate, and unmistakably human in origin. As the excavation team worked to clear the entrance, the Xilorians watched from a distance, their earlier mockery replaced by cautious observation. "They're not laughing anymore," John noted quietly. Lisa nodded, running her fingers over the ancient symbols. "Because they're starting to realize what we found. This isn't just an artifact, John. This is a piece of a forgotten chapter in human history, and I think it's about to open." The massive door groaned as it slowly opened, revealing a dark passage that seemed to stretch endlessly into the mountain. Lisa and John stood at the threshold, their flashlights cutting weak beams through the ancient darkness. "The air's breathable," John said, checking his scanner. "No detectable toxins. Temperature stable at 18 degrees. Lisa took a cautious step forward. Someone designed this to last. The walls of the corridor were smooth, made of the same strange metal as the artifacts they'd found. Their footsteps echoed as they moved deeper into the structure, followed by a small team of researchers and one reluctant Silurian observer. "The power systems appear dormant but intact," said Rita, their engineering specialist. "It's as if this place was meant to be found eventually." After walking nearly half a kilometer into the mountain, they entered a vast chamber. Their lights couldn't reach the ceiling, but they illuminated rows of darkened control stations and what appeared to be data storage units. "This is a command center," John whispered, his voice filled with awe. Lisa approached what seemed to be the main console. The symbols here were more elaborate, arranged in patterns that reminded her of star charts. As she leaned closer, the surface suddenly glowed with a soft blue light. "It recognized your presence," Rita gasped. The Silurian observer, Krill, moved forward quickly. "Step away from the controls. This technology must be properly analyzed before activation." John blocked his path. "This is a human archaeological expedition. Protocol gives us first access rights." Before Krill could protest further, the entire chamber hummed to life. Lights flickered on throughout the room, revealing its true scale. The ceiling, now visible, displayed a holographic map of the galaxy. "It's beautiful," Lisa breathed. A cylindrical container rose from the center of the main console. Inside was what appeared to be a data crystal, glowing with an inner light. "A repository," Rita said, "like those described in the ancient texts of the Ardanians." Lisa carefully removed the crystal and connected it to their translation device. Moments later, information began streaming across their screens. "These are star charts," John said, scrolling through the data. "Coordinates to other installations. There are dozens marked across the galaxy." Lisa's eyes widened as she read the translated text. "According to this, humans achieved interstellar travel over 50,000 years ago. We had a vast network of colonies and outposts." "Impossible," Krill scoffed. "Your species was still developing basic tools at that time." "Unless our understanding of human history is wrong," Lisa countered. She continued reading. "There are references here to something called Operation Phoenix. It seems to have been some kind of last resort plan." As they delved deeper into the data, the ground suddenly trembled. A section of the floor slid open, revealing a staircase descending further into the mountain. "There's more below," John said. When they reached the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in an even larger chamber. This one was filled with rows of sleek, metallic objects. "Weapons?" Rita suggested. "No," Lisa replied, approaching one of the objects. "Ships. Miniature spacecraft of some kind." The Silurian observer laughed. "These primitive vessels. They wouldn't survive a single jump through hyperspace." As if in response to his mockery, the nearest ship suddenly hummed to life. A holographic figure appeared beside it, a woman in an unfamiliar uniform. "Greetings, descendants," the hologram said. "I am Commander Kate Martinez, Earth Fleet. If you found this facility, then the time has come to awaken what we left behind." Lisa and John exchanged stunned glances as the hologram continued. "What you see here is merely the beginning. The real fleet awaits your command." Krill's dismissive expression had vanished, replaced by growing alarm as he activated his communication device to contact the Silurian delegation. "This changes everything," Lisa whispered to John. "We didn't just find artifacts. We found our true history." The hologram of Commander Martinez flickered as it continued its message. "This outpost was the first of many we established across the stars. When the enemy came, we hid our greatest achievements, hoping that one day our children would reclaim them." Lisa approached the hologram cautiously. "What enemy? Who were you fighting?" The holographic image didn't respond to her questions. It was just a recording, not an interactive AI. Instead, it continued its programmed message, explaining that the small ships they saw were merely scout vessels. The activation sequence requires human DNA, the hologram explained. Place your hand on the main console to begin. John looked at Lisa uncertainly. Should we? We came here to discover the truth, she replied, moving toward the console. Let's find it. Lisa placed her palm on the smooth surface of the control panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft light scanned her hand, and the entire chamber rumbled to life. Lights flashed on throughout the room, and the small ships began to hover slightly above the floor. Outside the mountain, across the valley where their main camp was established, the ground began to shake. Research teams ran for safety as sections of earth split open, revealing massive metal structures rising from below. Back in the hidden bunker, screens activated around Lisa and John, showing them what was happening outside. Huge defense towers were emerging from the ground, unfurling like metal flowers to reveal weapon systems unlike anything in the current galactic arsenal. By the void, whispered Krill, the Xilorian observer. His earlier disdain had vanished, replaced by something close to fear. What have you done? We didn't build these, John reminded him. Our ancestors did. The main screen showed a satellite view of the planet, where a network of defense platforms was now activating in orbit. The hologram of Commander Martinez smiled proudly. The planetary defense grid is now online. This will protect you while the main fleet awakens. In the Xilorian ship hovering above the planet, panic ensued. Their sensors detected energy signatures from the defense platforms that surpassed anything in their database. What they had dismissed as primitive technology now revealed itself as something far more advanced. The Xilorian ambassador Zrel demanded an emergency communication with Lisa. His face appeared on one of the bunker's screens, his usual composure completely gone. Deactivate these weapons immediately. You have no authorization to deploy military technology in this sector. Lisa stood her ground. These aren't our weapons, Ambassador. We've simply uncovered them. According to galactic law, archaeological finds belong to the discovering species. As they argued, another section of the bunker opened, revealing a pristine chamber containing what appeared to be a stasis pod. The glass was frosted over, making it impossible to see what or who might be inside. Commander Martinez's hologram appeared beside this new discovery. This contains the key to activating the main fleet. When the time is right, when the enemy returns, you will need this. The stasis pod began to glow with an internal light. Ice crystals melted away from the glass, revealing not a person inside, but a small spherical device. The command core, Martinez's hologram explained. 50,000 years ago, we faced extinction. We sacrificed everything to build the fleet that would one day save our descendants. The sphere rose from the pod and hovered in the air before Lisa. It pulsed with a soft blue light that seemed to beat like a heart. Your biological signature has been accepted, the hologram said. You now have access to the first tier of Phoenix Protocol. Outside, the defense platforms fired a synchronized pulse into space, creating a protective barrier around the planet. The Xilorian ships backed away hurriedly, their sensors overwhelmed by the power readings. John looked at the screens showing the Xilorians retreating, then turned to Lisa. They're not laughing anymore. Lisa nodded, her eyes fixed on the floating sphere. And this is just the beginning. Word of the ancient fleet spread like wildfire across the Galactic Council. Within days, diplomatic vessels from 12 different species arrived in orbit around the planet, now named Phoenix by Lisa's team. They kept a respectful distance from the activated defense grid. They want to hold an emergency session, John said, looking at the latest message from Council headquarters. All major powers will attend. Lisa nodded absently, her attention focused on the hovering command core they had extracted from the stasis pod. She had spent nearly every waking hour studying it, learning how to access its information. "The Council can wait," she replied. "We've barely scratched the surface of what's here." The Command Corps projected star maps showing locations across the galaxy where other facilities lay dormant. Most disturbing were the warnings embedded in the data, references to an enemy called the Void Harbingers that had nearly wiped out humanity long ago. Rita burst into the command center, her face pale. "You need to see this. Now." She activated the main screen, showing a news broadcast from a distant colony world. The footage showed massive black ships emerging from what appeared to be tiers in space itself. They moved with impossible speed, firing weapons that seemed to erase matter completely. "This attack happened 6 hours ago at New Eden Colony," Rita explained. "No survivors reported." John swallowed hard. Those ships matched the descriptions in the archives. The Void Harbingers. "They've returned," Lisa whispered, "just like Commander Martinez warned." The communication system chimed with an incoming message from the Xilorian flagship. Ambassador Zrel appeared on screen, his usual arrogance replaced by grim urgency. "Dr. Watson, the Council demands immediate access to the defense technology you've discovered. The safety of the galaxy is at stake." "The same Council that dismissed our findings as primitive junk last week," John said bitterly. Lisa held up her hand to quiet him. "Ambassador, these systems respond only to human genetic markers. We couldn't transfer control to you even if we wanted to." Zrel's skin rippled with anger. "Then we will take human operators. Prepare to receive a delegation of our scientists and military personnel." The transmission cut off abruptly. Lisa turned to her team. "They're desperate," she said, "and desperate people do dangerous things." That night, as most of the human team slept, alarm systems blared throughout the facility. Lisa rushed to the command center to find John already there, monitoring security feeds. "Xilorian Special Forces," he explained, pointing to the screen showing dark figures approaching the mountain entrance. "They're trying to take the facility by force." Before they could respond, the defense systems activated automatically. A pulse of energy washed over the approaching soldiers, freezing them in place. "The facility is protecting itself," Rita observed. Lisa turned her attention to the command core, which was pulsing more rapidly now. "It's trying to tell us something." She placed her hand on the sphere, and suddenly the main chamber transformed around them. The walls seemed to disappear, replaced by a view of a massive gas giant several light years away. "That's Helios 7, John identified. Uninhabitable gas giant in the Cygnus sector." The view zoomed into the planet's atmosphere, revealing something hidden within the swirling clouds, an enormous structure, easily the size of a small moon. "The main shipyard," Lisa breathed. "That's where the real fleet is." Another alarm sounded. This one from their long-range sensors. More Void Harbinger ships had appeared at the edge of the system, moving steadily toward Phoenix. "We're out of time," Lisa said decisively. "We need to activate the main fleet now." Outside, the Xilorian ships moved into defensive positions as the black vessels approached. Their earlier mockery of human primitive technology was forgotten as they faced a threat they couldn't comprehend. John looked at the approaching enemy ships, then back to Lisa. "How do we get to Helios 7 in time?" Lisa smiled slightly as the command core pulsed in response. "I think our ancestors thought of that too." The command core pulsed rhythmically in Lisa's hands, growing warmer until it seemed to melt into her skin. She gasped as information flooded her mind. Coordinates, codes, and activation sequences. "Lisa." John's voice sounded distant despite him standing right beside her. "What's happening?" "I can see it all," she whispered. "The genetic marker they mentioned. It's not just about DNA. Some humans carry a specific sequence that allows full neural interface with the systems." The floor beneath them began to shift. Metal panels slid aside, revealing the hidden platform. As Lisa stepped onto it, still holding the command core, the platform began to descend rapidly into the depths of the mountain. "John, Rita, come on," she called. They jumped onto the platform just before it dropped out of reach. They descended for what seemed like minutes before emerging into an enormous underground hangar. Sitting in the center was a sleek ship unlike any they had seen before. Its hull gleamed with the same mysterious metal as the artifacts, but its design was clearly built for speed and stealth. A jump ship, Lisa said, knowledge flowing into her mind from the command core. It can reach Helios 7 in minutes. As they approached, the ship's entry ramp lowered automatically. Inside, the controls lit up as Lisa entered the bridge. She placed the command core into a receptacle on the main console, and the ship hummed to life. "The coordinates are already set," she told her companions. "Strap in." Above ground, the Xilorians watched in confusion as energy readings spiked beneath the mountain. Moments later, a section of ground split open, and the jump ship shot into the sky at impossible speed, disappearing almost instantly. "What was that?" Ambassador Zrel demanded. His science officer shook his head in disbelief. "They've achieved trans-dimensional jump capability. That technology has been theoretical for centuries." Inside the jump ship, Lisa, John, and Rita had experienced a moment of disorientation as space seemed to fold around them. When their vision cleared, they were hovering above the swirling atmosphere of Helios 7. "That was fast," John managed, his knuckles white where he gripped his seat. Lisa didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the console as the command core guided their descent into the gas giant's upper atmosphere. Massive storm systems parted before them, revealing a structure of impossible scale hidden within the clouds. "The shipyard," Rita breathed. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers, a vast complex of docking bays, construction facilities, and at its center, thousands of ships arranged in perfect formation. They hung motionless, dormant but preserved in the hostile atmosphere that had hidden them for millennia. Their jump ship docked automatically at a control center overlooking the fleet. As they stepped out, lights activated throughout the facility, responding to Lisa's presence. "The awakening protocol requires a human with the marker to initiate," Lisa explained, knowledge flowing into her from the command core. "Once begun, each ship will activate its own systems." She approached the main control panel and placed both hands on its surface. Energy surged through her body as the console scanned her genetic pattern. For a moment, pain threatened to overwhelm her, but then it subsided into a warm glow that spread from her hands throughout the facility. One by one, lights began to appear across the dormant fleet. Engines glowed with building power as ancient systems reactivated. The ships were elegant but clearly designed for warfare, some small and agile, others massive and heavily armed. At the center of the fleet, the largest vessel awoke. Its hull was emblazoned with the name Horizon's Dawn in ancient human script. As its systems came online, a holographic figure appeared on the bridge of the control center, a man in a uniform similar to Commander Martinez's. "Fleet Admiral Alex Donovan, reporting for duty," the hologram announced. Unlike Martinez's recording, this AI responded to their presence. "I see the Phoenix protocol has been activated. Has the enemy returned?" Lisa nodded. "The Void Harbingers are attacking worlds across the galaxy. We need the fleet." Admiral Donovan's hologram smiled grimly. "Then it's time to fulfill our purpose. All ships are awaiting your command, Director Watson." John looked at Lisa in surprise. "Director?" "The command core recognized her genetic pattern," Donovan explained. "She carries the authorization codes of our original leadership. This fleet now answers to her." Throughout the shipyard, thousands of vessels now hummed with power, their AI systems awakening with the personality imprints of their original captains. A fleet built by ancient humans, preserved for 50 millennia, ready to fight once more. The Void Harbingers descended on the Phoenix planet without warning. Their black ships moved like liquid shadows, absorbing energy weapons fired by the panicked Xilorian defenders. The ancient defense grid alone held them at bay, its technology still beyond their understanding. "We're losing ground," Ambassador Zrel reported through an emergency channel to Lisa. His usual arrogance had disappeared entirely. These creatures, they're unlike anything we've encountered. Lisa stood on the bridge of the Horizon's dawn, watching tactical displays as the massive fleet prepared to depart Helios 7. Hold position for 8 more minutes. Ambassador, help is coming. Admiral Donovan's hologram appeared beside her. Though just a personality construct, his presence carried the weight of command. All ships report ready, Director Watson. The fleet awaits your order. Lisa took a deep breath. Admiral, begin Operation Phoenix. Save those people. Throughout the gas giant, thousands of ships activated their engines simultaneously. They rose from their long slumber, moving in perfect formation as they ascended through the churning atmosphere. The smallest vessels were agile fighters, while the largest rivaled small moons in size. John watched the spectacle from a viewport, his expression a mixture of awe and disbelief. Our ancestors built all this. How is that possible? The records are becoming clearer as more systems activate. Rita explained, reviewing data on her pad. 50,000 years ago, humans weren't primitive at all. We had a vast civilization spanning hundreds of worlds. As the fleet cleared the atmosphere, Admiral Donovan's tactical systems assessed the battle at Phoenix Planet. The Harbingers have evolved their tactics since our last encounter, but their base technology remains similar. Our countermeasures should still be effective. The fleet entered trans-dimensional space, traveling distances that would take conventional ships months in mere minutes. They emerged directly above Phoenix Planet, surrounding the Harbinger attack force. On the Silurian command ship, screens lit up with warnings as thousands of vessels appeared from nowhere. Ambassador Israel stared in disbelief at the massive fleet. "Impossible," he whispered. The Harbinger ships immediately broke off their attack on the planet, turning their attention to the new threat. They recognized the ancient fleet, the only force that had ever truly challenged them. Admiral Donovan's voice broadcast across all channels. "Void Harbingers, you were defeated once before. You will be defeated again. This is our galaxy, and you are not welcome in it." The battle that followed was unlike anything the modern galactic species had ever witnessed. The Harbinger vessels fired weapons that distorted reality itself, but the ancient fleet had been built specifically to counter such attacks. Where modern shields failed instantly, the strange metal of the human vessels absorbed and redirected the energy. Lisa watched from the flagship as tactical data flowed through her mind via the command core interface. She could sense each ship, feel the patterns of the battle as if they were extensions of her own body. "These connections," she said quietly to John, who stood at her side. "They feel familiar somehow, like I'd done this before." "There's something in the command center you need to see," Rita called from a nearby console. "I found sealed records about human history, about why we don't remember any of this." On the main screen, she displayed ancient footage showing Earth in flames. Harbinger ships surrounded the planet as desperate evacuation vessels flood the surface. "They nearly destroyed us," Admiral Donovan's hologram explained. "We won the war, but at terrible cost. Most of our worlds were in ruins, our population reduced to millions from billions." The footage continued, showing the solemn council of survivors making a fateful decision. "The Harbingers hunt advanced civilizations," Donovan continued. "They're drawn to technology and progress. So our ancestors made the hardest choice imaginable. They destroyed most of their own technology and wiped the memory of it from history." Lisa's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "We didn't evolve from primitive beings." "No," Donovan confirmed. "Your civilization was deliberately regressed. Earth was reseeded with survivors who agreed to live simple lives, to develop slowly, to hide in plain sight until the fleet was needed again." On the screens around them, the battle turned decisively as the ancient fleet executed maneuvers that trapped the Harbinger vessels in a complex, three-dimensional net. Victory was within reach. John looked at Lisa, his expression troubled. "Then who are we really?" The final Void Harbinger vessel shuddered under the combined firepower of 3 ancient destroyers. Ital, once seeming impervious to modern weapons, cracked open like an egg. Light poured from the wounds in its structure before it collapsed in on itself, vanishing in a flash of dark energy. "Last enemy ship destroyed," reported Admiral Donovan's hologram. "The battle is won." Across the bridge of the Horizon's dawn, the human crew members embraced each other, laughing and crying with relief. Lisa stood quietly at the command station, the neural link with the fleet showing her the full scope of their victory. Not just at Phoenix Planet, but across 12 systems where other elements of the ancient fleet had engaged Harbinger forces. "It's over," John said, joining her at the console. "They're gone." Lisa nodded, but her expression remained somber. "For now. But they've returned once. They'll come again." The main communication screen activated, showing a joint transmission from the Galactic Council chambers. Representatives from every major species sat in stunned silence, having witnessed the battle through long-range sensors. At the center was the Silurian High Chancellor, his blue skin pale with what Lisa now recognized as their version of awe. "Humanity," the Chancellor began, his voice formal but humbled, "the Council extends its deepest gratitude for your intervention. We had no understanding of the true threat we faced, nor of your species' true history." John stepped forward. "Perhaps it's time for that history to be properly remembered." In the days that followed, ships from across the galaxy arrived at Phoenix Planet. What had begun as an archaeological expedition became a pilgrimage site for thousands curious to see the remnants of a civilization that had sacrificed itself to protect the stars. Lisa, John, and Rita were invited to the council chambers on the central world of Galaxis Prime. They stood before the assembled representatives of 200 species, many of which had long looked down on humans as newcomers to the galactic stage. "We have reviewed the archives recovered from the Phoenix facilities," announced the council elder, an ancient being from one of the oldest species. "What we have learned has fundamentally changed our understanding of galactic history." Holographic displays showed the true timeline of human advancement, a spacefaring civilization that had reached the stars 50,000 years before any current record indicated. Images of vast cities, beautiful ships, and technological marvels beyond current understanding filled the chamber. "When the Void Harbingers first came to our galaxy," the elder continued, "it was humanity alone that stood against them. While other young civilizations hid or fell, humans built the fleet that would eventually drive the enemy back." Lisa stepped forward when invited to speak. The neural link with the command core had changed her. She could feel the weight of history in her mind. Connections to memories that weren't her own but somehow belonged to her. "Our ancestors made the ultimate sacrifice," she told the assembled council. "They didn't just build ships and weapons. They gave up their civilization. They deliberately regressed their technology, erased their own memories, and started again from the beginning, all to hide from an enemy that hunted advanced worlds." "Operation Phoenix," John added. "They hid the fleet and planted genetic markers in certain bloodlines, keys that would recognize when the time came to awaken what they had hidden." At the center of the chamber, a new monument was unveiled, a sculpture depicting humans of the ancient era standing defiant against the darkness. The plaque beneath it bore words retrieved from the command core, "So that our children may someday walk among the stars without fear." As the ceremony concluded, Lisa stood at a viewport overlooking the glittering capital. The fleet hung in orbit above, thousands of ships that now answered to modern humanity. Admiral Donovan's hologram appeared beside her. "The final archives have been unlocked," he said quietly. "Would you like to see them?" Lisa nodded, and a small holographic projection appeared in her palm. It showed a woman who looked remarkably like her, dressed in the uniform of the ancient fleet. "Hello, descendant," the woman said with a warm smile. "My name is Admiral Elena Watson. If you're seeing this, then Operation Phoenix has succeeded. The enemy returned, and so did we." Lisa gasped softly as understanding dawned. The genetic markers weren't random. They were deliberately preserved bloodlines. "We always planned to come back," Elena's recording continued. We hid ourselves in history, but we never abandoned our children. The stars have always been your birthright. Now claim them.